la la la. We are in the Laban Lab. Okay, it is the Laban Lab, TV Land. If you made it through the last moment, I think I'm watching myself again in this moment, which cracks me up. I'm the one person watching. Um, we're going to play with two things today. We're going to play with transitions to and from the floor, and then also being off balance, being off center. Which is something that is so fun to play with. And I love to play with that with kids, like letting people find, like, we were talking before this class about how some people like to balance everything out. And how is it if we're not balanced? How do we cope when things aren't like in coming back to the homeostasis, right? Where things are a little over here or a little over there. But we're going to start with the floor. And we're actually going to start with some sort of adjusted Bartenieff fundamentals. So we're going to come onto our butts and of course with this class, do whatever you want to do, don't do whatever you don't want to do. And if something else becomes interesting in your movement exploration, go for it. Find out about that. Okay, so I'm going to start here and I'm just going to roll across one hip and I'm going to roll across the other. And I'm going to think about here as I'm rolling from side to side, I'm going to feel my connection with one hand and my connection with the other hand. So I'm rolling across my butt, but I'm also pushing one hand, landing on that hand, and pushing the other hand. The other thing I'm doing is I'm rolling across my feet. So I'm feeling all the surfaces that are connecting to the ground. I'm going to try to show this at a different angle. And just feeling those connections into my body. So I could talk about this as like a core distal thing, like the center of my body starts to roll, and then I'm going to the edges, or I could push from the edges and initiate there, and then it comes to center. For me, with this, for this to feel good in my body, it feels good if I'm really initiating in my belly, in my pelvis, in my guts, and just rolling from side to side. We're going to take this a little deeper. I'm going to just spiral further. So rolling across, I've got this arm circle going on the top. I'm pushing away. So there's also like a push pattern. I'm coming down into the ground and then I'm pushing up, adding this arm circle as I come up, down. And I can go deeper and deeper so as I'm coming to it, I'm having this relationship of my arms to the floor. My hands are touching into the earth. Then I'm painting the rainbow with them, and then I'm taking it back down. So here's one way to deal with that, right? Which we would think of if we broke this down into a bunch of Bartenieff fundamentals. We have an arm circle, we have a knee drop, and we have sort of a body half thing going, right? One half, and then the other half. And then this is kind of a upper versus lower pattern. So we're moving through a lot of different patterns. All right, we're going to take it a little deeper. And by deeper, I don't mean deeper, a little more up. So now instead of going and dropping, you're going to go and come across and reach. So it's still then to start to let yourself shift. So this could be just spatial intention, that reach with that arm, reaching out, and you can push off the back arm. Making it as easy as possible. So if it feels effortful and horrible, just slow it down and do less. Slow it down, let the pattern come in a very easy and gentle way. We just have this idea in the LABAN work called spatial intent. And that is like, my arm isn't just going out there, it's reaching for something, right? Like if I'm reaching for something, I have a spatial intent. If I'm actually just putting my arm out in space without any intention, it's not going to have the same connectedness as if there's as if there's an intention. And the intention doesn't mean that you really have to have a thing there. It could just be like, I'm imagining that I'm reaching out to this edge of space. I feel like that's one reason why having a really strong relationship to the polyhedra around you as possible options of movement can add a really deep layer of spatial intent. Like I'm reaching to place high, I'm reaching to place low, I'm reaching across, I'm reaching open. And I'm really hitting as if there's a point there that I'm touching into. So it's like this outer scaffolding is supporting my movement. Just throwing in that spatial intent, because I feel like that's so important. Like I can just be kind of rolling around in here and it's nice, it feels good. But if I go, oh, I'm reaching to that point, I'm coming across, I'm reaching to that point, then there's something else going on. So now I want to add the off balance part because we were talking about balance and off balance. So what I want to do is reach to that point and then let yourself move around. What happens when you reach to that point and then take it to different places instead of just getting up? You reach the point and then you let yourself go off, shift it, play with it. And it can be different from side to side. So you're finding a point, you're mobilizing. Suddenly I feel like I'm doing capoeira. It's like, I'm like, oh, there's like a little block in there. There's this mobility. I was thinking this morning about how I see a lot of fitness stuff on Instagram, and people are doing really specific exercises, and it's like, okay, it's cool, but it's kind of limited. I want to see them do their specific exercise and then show something more fluid and like animal, right? Where it's not, I take, like, can you imagine an animal? Well, I'm going to pick up my right paw and I'm going to push there, and then my left knee is going to move, and then my left paw is going to go there, and my right knee is going to move. Oh, no, no, you're not doing that right, right? Like animals don't do it right or wrong. They're just moving. So can we invite that into our body as we're moving? Like, can we find our animal and let the animal move through space, right? Like, there's a bunch of classes like animal flow, and then people are going to teach you how to flow like an animal. But what if you just act like an animal? Like, invite that in. It's like you're bringing in that energy. If I was an animal, I like to say if I was an alien that came into my human body for the first time, how would I know how to move? And I'm going to invite this to go really off center and be very, doesn't have to be even. You can shift it around, right? So taking it out of a balance, that I'm going to do exactly the same thing on my right or my left, and let it be more like playful. It's interesting. You see monkeys in a cage, and they have so much energy. Like they're pacing around. They're doing all their things. What can I do in this space? I'm in this limited space. It's always kind of depressing seeing animals at the zoo for me, but at the same time, probably some of them are happy just to have their food given to them, right? So letting yourself play with how you're getting around, letting yourself break. If you have a rule, break it. Whenever you feel like you're ready to take a rest, have a moment of resting. Feel what you feel in your body. If we start to build in the pause, take not the animal pause, but the pause, the take a break. What do we notice? I can feel my heart beating. I can feel my breath. I can feel the rise and fall of my breath. I can feel the front of my left shoulder. I can feel my feet on the floor. I can feel my clothes. I can feel the air. I can feel these different spirally patterns that move through my body and are very different from side to side. Yeah, the toes of my left foot are much more interested in moving and playing. The toes of my right foot are very calm right now. But I've got my right hand that wants to move around, right? So I've got this contralateral pattern, core distal pattern that has sort of come online in my resting moment. So core is center, distal is the edge, fingertips to navel, we could say, core distal. One diagonal through my body is feeling very alive. And interestingly, the other one is feeling relaxed. No need to do anything. So again, we can play with this idea of balance or off balance by just working a diagonal. We're going to play with one diagonal and we're not going to even it out. Maybe it's different for you. Maybe it's the upper body versus the lower body, or a different diagonal, or the right versus the left. Find something that's interesting to play with and just stay with that for a little while. Since we've slowed down, I'm going to stick with this core distal relationship. And what I will say about balance is that when you're doing choreography, it's very rarely the same on both sides, right? One of my dance teachers used to say, Laura, you don't want to dance with a company. Choreography will ruin your body. And so I became very aware as a choreographer of like, am I balancing out the body at all? Are we totally uneven? What's going on? So we're not going to balance that out, and we're going to come up and we're going to walk around. So bringing yourself up off the floor and feel into, like, maybe it's a diagonal that you're commonly waking up, or maybe something you just worked with, something that is your pattern to usually work with. Or maybe it's the other side. Because think about our lives. Like, are you right-handed or left-handed? So already, like, I'm right-handed. My feet are pretty even. My legs are pretty even. But I tend to do more things with my right? Although some things that I do make me balance it out. When I do pole, I try to do both sides evenly. But I play guitar. So one hand is strumming, the other hand is doing the fretboard. Same thing with violin. One hand is bowing, the other hand is up here. So these are ways that we're naturally not balanced anyway. Am I going to play those things the other way? No, it feels really super weird. So just tuning into where is the balance. Ha. And let's play with taking ourselves off balance now. So you're going to let yourself, maybe slow, maybe fast, shift. Now I can like kind of fall and then fake it like I'm really falling. And Bonnie, take it really easy in this. Don't fall over. Really listen to your body. But for my people that are going to take it further, go ahead and let yourself really go until you're going to have to catch yourself, right? So I'm actually, because I'm in a fairly small room, I'm controlling myself a lot more. If I was in a big dance studio, I could really throw myself around, letting myself go off vertical, right? Playing with that. What happens when you feel a little, whoa, out of control, right? When you let things loose, when you take the brakes off a little bit. Like, yeah, maybe throw yourself around a little bit. Don't if it's going to hurt, right? Be careful. You want to work with intelligence in your body. But yeah, if you have like a couch or a bed that you can kind of jump onto or into, go for it. When I was growing up, we used to play with my dad. I feel like there was a name to this. I guess we just called it roughhousing. But our house had like, the living room had two doors on a door on either end. And then you could run out through the kitchen, the dining room, and come back around. So he would sit in the middle of the living room with we had a big sponge foam mattress that was like folded over, and it would be in the middle as like this wall. And then every pillow that we had was around the wall. And we would come and try and bash through the wall. He'd be behind it to get to the other side. And as we were doing it, he'd pick us up and throw us around. So for me, like, I had at a very young age a real relationship with being thrown around and moving through space. And I know that children, especially girls, who roughhouse with their fathers, probably with their mothers too. I'm talking like some 1980s information. It's probably like both, but they have better mathematical skills, right? Our bodies learn as well as our brains, right? Our brains, our bodies moving are part of creating this possibility. And so for me, like I know one reason why I'm a dancer and why I love movement is because I was thrown around and it was fun and it was play. It was, I mean, yes, sometimes it was, sometimes I got hurt, but it also was like, it was still so much fun. I still wanted to go back, right? It wasn't so hurt that it was over or I couldn't do anymore. It was just like, oh no, I got a little too over wrestled. So I feel like this is so important with how people raise kids and how we are with our own body. Like how my mom used to say, it always bothered her when parents would say, "You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to get hurt. You don't do this. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to get hurt." Because you're telling the kid not to do things that like, how are we going to learn where the boundaries are if we don't fall over and get hurt sometimes, right? So I feel like that's one of the things with being super safe in movement. And I really believe in safety in movement. And yet we also want to push. And sometimes we don't learn where the boundary is until we've hit the boundary. So that's just one big thing to think about. Um, how safe are we? And how much safety do we need? Like I know people that go and take a pole class and are injured immediately and never come back. Or dancers, oh, I got a slip disc. That's the end of my dancing. It's like, and for me as a dancer, I've been injured a million times, but I want to go back because it's fun and I enjoy it. So then it's like, oh, how can I work with my body in a gentle, soothing way or something that's going to heal myself so I can be more resilient? Which body workers do I need to see regularly so my system has the capacity? And so for most of my life, I've seen chiropractors because I could afford that. I couldn't afford to get a massage all the time. I couldn't afford to go to the PT, couldn't afford this, couldn't afford a lot of things, but I could afford chiropractic. And I had some amazing chiropractors that really worked with my system. All right, that's a big waffle. Let's just move freely as you want to move. Any kind of movement, improvisational, free flow. You can take yourself off center or not. You can work to balance, to find balance, or you can like take yourself out of your balance. See what happens. How do we learn? We learn by taking ourselves to the edges and finding out where the boundary is by going too far sometimes. But not by stopping way before we hit that edge. Right? So that's just one thing thinking about movement. Ah. Yeah, what happens when we hurt ourselves? Like, do we then go into this like shock freak out? Or do we go, oh, it's going to be okay? Like, what happened? What did our parents say to us when we fell or when we cut ourselves? When I was a kid, I had my finger slammed in the car door and it peeled back my fingernail. And like this one finger was really uh, cut open, and the other fingernail was actually peeled back halfway. And my mom's a nurse. I was crying and crying and crying and crying for the whole night. And my mom said to me finally, Laura, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to take you to the hospital. I shut up instantly. I was like, I'm not going to the hospital. But she did take care of me. She bandaged it. Like I didn't need to go to the hospital. But it was like, okay, and I had the same situation with one of my cats. I was like, okay, the cat kept getting really sick. It had cost me tons of money. I was in New York, moving, I'm moving, moving, moving. Cat is sick, cat is sick, cat is sick. Take him to the hospital, take him to the hospital, take him to the hospital. And finally I was like, oh, the cat's really sick again. And I was like, I can't afford it. I can't keep going. I can't emotionally afford it. I can't. So I talked to my cat and I said, listen, we're going to work this out together. If you survive the next night, then tomorrow morning, because he would get sick on Friday night, and like all the vets are closed except for the most expensive one, right? Animal Medical Center emergency, 11 p.m. So finally, I was just like, we're going to work it out together. And then we did. We developed this whole way of, working it out. So it's like there's systems are shiftable. We think that it's going to be one way, but there's so many possibilities of how it could be when we're in communication with ourselves, with the creatures, our environment, all this stuff. Okay, that wasn't a very LABAN thing. Maybe it was a LABAN thing. I don't know. I feel like anything that's dealing with the body, anything that's dealing with space, anything that's dealing with being is kind of LABAN Bartenieff material. Ha. How are we with ourselves? And how do we feel? Is an injury going to stop me? Or is it going to make me more determined? Or is it going to just teach me how I need to take care of myself? Oh, well, the last time I had an injury, I did this. How do I soften in my system so that things can clear and heal quickly, as opposed to getting stuck in there, right? And it's not to say that we're all responsible and have the tools to make our lives perfect by any means. It's just that when we encounter these resistances or, these big boundaries, how do we make it to the other side? Just thinking about that. So the whole philosophy of resistance, go with, move through, slow down, speed up. Yeah, all this kind of stuff. I see Maria is going for it with the off-center stuff, which is so much fun. When I teach classes with kids, I usually have them, especially really like classically trained people, I love to get them off balance a little bit. Yeah, how do we break some rules? How do we learn anything if we don't break any rules? How do we learn our own information, our own truth, if we aren't testing out the boundaries of other people's truth?
That
All
one's
right.
quotable.
Awesome. I'm gonna stop the live stream. LABAN lab, it's really a place to think about things and to test things, right? A lab is a place where we go in and we try it on, we try it out, we see what happens.